Good morning dear students, this is Amrita BL from AAC Independent PU College, Department of Biology. In my last video session, we have learnt about losses of biodiversity and causes of biodiversity. In causes of biodiversity, we have studied 4 major causes of biodiversity loss. The 4 major causes were also known as the evil quartet. Firstly, it was habitat loss and habitat fragmentation. Secondly, it was over exploitation, means excessive use of some resource or natural resource. Thirdly, it was alien species invasion. Okay, so we have also studied some of the examples regarding alien species invasion. The last cause was co-extinction. Along with that, we have studied the examples of it, and lastly we have also talked about the causes of extinction, right? So, in today's session, we will be talking about how we can conserve the biodiversity and what are the reasons or what are the main need to conserve the biodiversity. So, firstly, let us talk about how actually we can conserve the biodiversity. Here are some of the reasons to conserve the biodiversity. So, first and foremost, if we control the population, definitely we can conserve the biodiversity. Okay, that means the the overpopulation has to be controlled in some particular regions of the world. The second one is about controlling the urbanization, or we can control the urbanization and industrialization to some extent. The third one is about we can impart some of the knowledge, or we can provide some of the awareness, or we can create some awareness regarding the environmental issues by educating the people. Okay, the last one is about restoring the lost biodiversity, or we can also regain the lost biodiversity by planting the trees or by conserving the water and things like that. So, these are the 4 major reasons that how we can actually overcome the biodiversity loss. So, now let us know some of the reasons why actually we need to conserve the biodiversity. So, they are grouped into 3 major categories. The firstly, it is narrowly utilitarian, secondly it is broadly utilitarian, and thirdly it is ethical utilitarian. So, the word utilitarian means uses. Okay. So, one by one let us take up in my further slides. Firstly, it is narrowly utilitarian. So, in this category, the humans derive countless direct economic benefits from the nature. Okay, that means to say we directly dependent upon the nature for some of the factors, like it could be like food. We know that the food is a main source for our life. So, we extract cereals, pulses, fruits and vegetables also. And secondly, it is about the firewood. Okay, so firewood is a substance where we can be used it as a fuel. Okay, thirdly it is the fibers. Okay, so we extract fibers from the nature such as cotton, jute, sun hemp or coir. Okay, for the purpose of fabrics or for the purpose of clothing. Okay, the lastly it is about the construction material. Okay, so the construction material includes sand, bricks or timber also. So, these are the these are the sources that we actually extract from the nature. So, along with this we also extract some of the industrially important products as well. So, some of the industrially important products are mentioned here, such as tannins. Okay, so tannins are nothing but the organic substances that are usually present on the bark of the tree. Okay. Secondly, it is lubricants. So, we use the lubricant oil in some of the machines. Okay. Then thirdly, it is the dyes. So, dyes are nothing but the coloring substance such as indigo. The blue color is extracted from indigo plant, and we also extract resins. So, resins are nothing but a polymer which are used as a varnishing agent, or they are also used as a adhesive, that is gums, and they are also used as a glazing agent. Okay, they are applied to a surface of area, surface of any object, so that it gives a shiny appearance. Okay, that is about resins. And we also extract perfumes from some of the aromatic plants. Aromatic plants are those plants which provides aroma. Okay, so from these plants the perfumes are also extracted. So not only the industrially important products, we also extract some of the medicines from the plants. Okay, so more than 25% of the drugs that actually we are using in a market, or that are being sold in a market, are derived from plants. Okay, that will tell us about 25,000 species of plants will contribute to the medicines. Okay, so these medicines are used by native peoples of the world. So in the name of Ayurveda, or it might be in some of the cases, the native peoples will use such medicines to cure some of the diseases. For example, the cocoa plant is used as a local anesthetic. Okay, and rosy periwinkle, or what you call it as Vinca rosea. So this Vinca rosea plant has a capacity to cure the leukemia diseases. Okay, and cinchona tree is used to treat the malaria. And there are many such variety of plants and trees that has a capacity to cure some of the diseases. Okay, so this leads to a term called as bioprospecting. So bioprospecting means the search of plant and animal species from which the medicinal drugs and other commercially valuable products can be obtained. That means the exploration. So we keep on searching some of the plants or some of the animal species, and then extract some of the important drugs which are in a medicinal purpose. Okay, so that extraction of valuable components from plants and animals leads to a bioprospecting. Okay, so this is done by exploring their molecular level, genetic level, or species level diversity. So for example, so take two plants of Rauwolfia vomitoria. So in the first slide, in the first session, you have studied about devil's pepper plant. So Rauwolfia plant A and Rauwolfia plant B. Okay, so plant A of Rauwolfia is able to produce 5% of reserpine. So reserpine is nothing but a chemical or a bioactive compound that is produced by the plant species. Okay, so plant A will produce 5% of reserpine. At the same time, plant B produces 35% of reserpine. So which plant would you select for the medicine purpose? Definitely the plant B is selected, because it is producing more amount of reserpine than plant A. So this we are talking about species level diversity. So here we are exploring the species level diversity which produces more amount of valuable components. Okay, so that is about the narrowly utilitarian. The second one is broadly utilitarian. Okay, so there are some ecosystem services that we are using it for free without any price tags. It means that the nature is giving all the things just for free, which we cannot even buy. That is why we need to conserve the biodiversity. So let me talk about some of the examples for broadly utilitarian. So if you take an example of fresh air, okay, the fresh air we take, if we put a price tag on such things, we are not able to buy it anyhow. Why we cannot buy such things? Because we cannot afford it. It is quietly expensive. So if we conserve the biodiversity, the fresh air will be provided for free of cost. So if you take example of the lungs of the planet or the lungs of the earth, so which is known as Amazon rainforest, right? The Amazon rainforest alone gives 20% of total oxygen. So out of 100%, the majority portion of oxygen is given for free of cost by Amazon rainforest. That is why the Amazon rainforest is known as the lungs of the planet or the lungs of the earth. The second example is about water. Okay, we all know that we cannot survive without water. Obviously we get water from freshwater resources. It could be like rivers, lakes, or things like that, or ponds also. Okay. So that is also provided by nature for free of cost. So we need to respect the nature for what it is giving to us. Okay. The third example is about pollination. Okay. There are many pollinating agents like bat, birds and bees, especially bumblebees. Okay. So they are doing their work without taking any single penny from us. So pollination, we know that the pollination will induce sexual reproduction in plants. So that is why the conservation of biodiversity plays an important role. So what if you don't conserve the biodiversity? There is no pollinating agent. If there is no pollinating agent, no pollination process takes place. If there is no pollination, no sexual reproduction in angiosperms, right? If there is no sexual reproduction, there is no crop growth. If there is no crop growth, no harvesting of crop, and finally there is no yield. So this overall the plant productivity will be declined. That is why the pollination or the pollinating agents must be, or they play an important role in production of the plant. The third example is aesthetic pleasure. Okay. So the third thing is about the pleasure. So just imagine when you are wide awake in the morning and the birds from the mountains will start to chirp. Okay, like they will start to sing, like they are trying to say you good morning. Okay, and you take a morning walk through the thick woods and watching the flowers blooming. How nice it is, right? So can we put the price tag on such things? Not at all. Okay, so that pleasure, for that aesthetic pleasure, we cannot afford that much amount, right? So when nature is giving so much, in return we need to conserve it at most. Okay. Then the third category is about ethical values or ethical and moral values. So God has created each and every species, and each and every species has its own intrinsic value. Intrinsic value means to say inbuilt special features or inbuilt special or talented values. Okay. So each and every species has its own value, has its own inbuilt values. Okay. The God has created all the species because they have some or the other tasks to perform. So basically we have no right to kill them, or we have no right to harm them, or any of the species are not killed by humans. Okay. Even if they do not have much importance, or even if they do not have any economic value in the nature, we do not have right to kill them. Okay. So this is driven by our moral values or moral duties. So it is our responsibility, it is our whole and soul responsibility to take care of their well-being and pass on a wonderful biological wealth or wonderful biological treasure to our future generations also. So that was about the reasons for conserving the biodiversity. There are three categories. Firstly, it is narrowly utilitarian. Secondly, it is broadly utilitarian, and thirdly it is ethical values. So now coming to the second part of the chapter, second part of the topic, that is how do we conserve the biodiversity. So in the first part we have studied the reasons to conserve the biodiversity. Now let us come to the conclusion that how actually we can conserve the biodiversity. Okay. So when we think of conservation and protection, the whole ecosystem, its biodiversity or at all the levels has to be protected. Okay. And this ways of biodiversity conservation is an examination question. So please mark a note of it. Okay. Then, so there are two categories of conserving biodiversity. So first one is in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. So let us talk about in situ conservation first, and then let us move on to ex situ conservation. So in situ conservation, in situ means in, meaning inside. Okay. So if we need to conserve the, or if we need to save the tigers, okay, so just like that you cannot take up the tiger and keep it in your home, is it not? So how we can conserve the tiger? So we can save the tiger. How? So we can save the tiger. If we have to save the tiger, we have to save the entire forest. Okay, so if we need to save the tiger or any of the important species for that matter, the entire forest or that entire ecosystem has to be conserved. Okay, so this kind of approach is called as in situ conservation. So for example, if I am living in a forest, okay, if I am living in a forest, I will be conserved in the forest only. Okay, so I am living in a forest and I will be conserved in the forest itself. That doesn't mean that I will not be taken into the zoo or I will not be taken into any botanical gardens. Okay, so I will be conserved on my own site, or that is on site conservation. Okay, so along with me the whole ecosystem is being conserved automatically. So that is about in situ conservation. In situ conservation, along with me my ecosystem, my biodiversity will be conserved hand in hand. At the same time the entire locality will be conserved as well. Okay, then so there are two types of in situ conservation, that is hotspot and protected area. So let me talk about hotspot first. Okay, so there is something called as biodiversity hotspot. Okay, the term biodiversity hotspot was given by Norman Mayer. So biodiversity hotspot is nothing but it is a region which are known for their high species richness and high degree of endemism. Okay, so it is biodiversity hotspot is a region where it is known for two major components. The first one, it must have high species diversity or high species richness. Secondly, it must possess high degree of endemism. In this statement there are two new words, that is species richness. By now you might have known the meaning of species richness. Okay, the second word is endemism. So endemism is nothing but it is the state of ecological system, or it is the ecological system of the species being unique and confined to that particular region and not found anywhere else. That means the species is confined, any of the species or any of the unique species is confined to that particular region and they cannot be found anywhere else. Such kind of ecological state is known as endemism. So to make it clear, if you take an example of polar bear and penguins, they are confined or they are restricted to polar regions only. So you cannot bring polar bear and you cannot bring you cannot bring penguins to the desert regions, is it not? So the polar regions is a confined or the restricted area where the polar bears and penguins can habitat there. Okay, similarly kangaroos are confined to Australia only and the tortoises are restricted to Galapagos Island only. Okay, so such ecological state is known as endemism, and the word or the term endemism is important for your examination point of view. So you may get a question, define endemism, along with the definition and example you have to quote it. Okay, then so initially 25 biodiversities were identified globally. So now 9 more biodiversity hotspots are being added. So currently it is 34, there are 34 biodiversity hotspots, out of which India has 3 hotspot regions. Firstly it is Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, and it is Indo-Burma, and thirdly it is Himalaya. Okay, so these 3 hotspots, that is Western Ghats, Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma and Himalaya, will cover country's highest biodiversity regions. Okay, so our country protects such biodiversity rich regions as in the name of biosphere reserves, national parks and sanctuaries. Okay. So, India has 14 biosphere reserves and 90 national parks and 448 wildlife sanctuaries. Then, so that was about the first type of in situ conservation, that was hotspot. The second type was protected areas. Okay. So, we know that India is a land where it gives lot of importance to religion, culture and the traditional values. Okay. In many cultures, they believe that an extra piece of land, or what you call it as forest fragments, okay, an extra piece of land or the trees or the wildlife within that area or within that locality is given highest protection, or it is given with special protection. Such areas or such groves are known as sacred groves. Again it is 1 mark question, define the term sacred groves. Okay. So, what do you mean by sacred groves? It is an extra piece of land, okay, or it is a forest fragment, or it also includes some of the trees or some of the wildlife. So, within that area, so that area is given a special care. Okay. So, wherein you cannot do deforestation, or you cannot cut down the trees, or you cannot extract some of the valuable materials from that locality. It is being protected. Okay. Such areas are known as sacred groves, or you can also tell it like this. So, there is some connection of human beings with some of the important plants and animals. That means we have some bondage between some of the plants and animals. So, if you take an example of tulsi, or if you take an example of banyan tree, neem tree, we have some special bondage between the plants. Similarly with the animals also, like cow, snake, we worship them, right? So, that bondage or that special connection is known as the sacred groves, and that protection is known as sacred groves. Okay. That just like that we cannot cut or we cannot chop off them, right? So, that protected area or that protected arena is known as sacred groves. So, here are some of the examples for sacred groves. The Khasi and Jaintia hills of Meghalaya. So, there are 125 sacred groves in Meghalaya region, and it is the safest place for large number of rare and threatened plants. The second example is Aravalli hills of Rajasthan. Then the western Ghats of Karnataka and Maharashtra, and Sarguja, Chanda and Bastar of Madhya Pradesh. And these are some of the sacred plants and sacred animals, and these are some of the sacred deities that usually the tribals worship. Then, so that was about the in situ conservation. So, in situ in general, on site conservation. In contradictory to the in situ conservation, the ex situ conservation means in meaning inside, here ex situ, ex meaning outside or off site. So, what is this ex situ conservation? So, if I am a threatened animal, or if I am a threatened plant species. So, what do you mean by the term threatened? Threatened means it is near to the endanger or endanger in the near future. Okay. So, if I am a threatened animal or plant species, only I will be taken to some other place. Okay. Only I will be concentrated more. So, then I will be taken to some other place. The some other places might be like zoo or botanical gardens. There my protection will be taken. Okay. For example, if I am staying in one room, okay, I will be taken out of my room and protected, and the things that are associated with me in my room are left out like that as such. Okay. On the main concentration will be on me. So, I will be taken and then protected in some other artificial environment. Okay. Apart from, so that is about the ex situ conservation. So here in ex situ, so I will be taken out from my site, so that is off site conservation. So here are some of the examples of ex situ conservation. So that is zoo and some of the botanical gardens and some of the wildlife safari parks. And apart from the plants and animals, the gametes are also being protected. Okay, you know the gametes are the reproductive cells. Okay, so what happens here? The gametes of the threatened species can also be protected or preserved for longer duration of time in a fertile condition. So how we can preserve such gametes for longer duration of time is that by using a special technique called as cryopreservation. Okay, cryopreservation is a technique where the substance or any material, for example the gametes, okay, the gametes are kept under low temperature. Okay, maybe it will be around 0 degree or minus degrees as well. Okay, so it depends upon the what type of matter that you are using. Okay, so preserving such materials for longer duration of time using cryopreservation techniques. Okay, and then this eggs can be fertilized whenever it is required. Okay, by a process called as in vitro. Okay, in vitro is nothing but it is a biological process occurring, it is a biological process that occurs in an artificial environment, not in a natural environmental system, in an artificial environment like laboratory conditions. Okay, so whenever it is required we can fertilize such things. Then there is something called as cell culture or tissue culture. Okay, so here the cells are grown under controlled condition, generally outside their natural environment, that means to say in vitro conditions only. So plants can be propagated using tissue culture methods. The first one, the gametes that have been preserved are known as gene bank or seed bank. Okay, so that is so this is also an example for ex situ conservation. So it is our duty to conserve the nature at most, right? So the here is about the large formal assembly on the biodiversity that was known as the Earth Summit that held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. So this Earth Summit called up of almost all nations, and so that they can take the preventive measures for conservation of biodiversity. Okay, so the Rio Earth Summit was held in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. So there was a step to conserve the biodiversity. So similarly, there was, along with this Earth Summit, there was a World Summit on Sustainable Development that held in 2002 in Johannesburg, South Africa. Okay, so here around 190 countries pledged in order to conserve the biodiversity and achieve this conservation by the end of 2010. Okay. So it is our duty to, or it is our responsibility, it is our whole and soul responsibility to conserve the biodiversity and pass on this wonderful gift to our future generations also. Okay. So at most whatever we can do with our limited resources, we can conserve the biodiversity for our well-being only. So with this I complete the chapter biodiversity and conservation, and here is a link so that you can get or you can access for the additional information and for the notes purpose. So this link will be copied in the description box. Okay, I thank you all dear students. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.